Good evening to all of you. Myself, Dr. Gomati Subramaniam, Kerala IRIA President, representing our whole Kerala IRA team, who is doing a lot of wonderful activities starting from 2022 January. We have been doing lot of activities, including academic sessions, social activities, Raksha activities, and Shakti activities, along with many lectures for the public on the World Cancer Day and Infertility Week, giving nice talks to public so that it will be very helpful for the public so that they can be aware of many things. So we are doing lot of activities so that the public as well as the faculties can be with us and help us throughout. And today we have taken the program for 1 week on healthcare awareness, and this is going to continue this week starting from 9 p.m. And our first talk is by Mr. Sunil David, and this is mainly on the digital transformation in healthcare. And I'm introducing the speaker, Sunil David, who has 28 years of experience in IT and telecom industries, also affiliated to several industry bodies, spoken on a wide and diverse range of topics, including Industry 4.0, IoT, AI, supply chain digitalization, Metaverse, cybersecurity, digital marketing, digital transformation, future of work, Metaverse, etc. And we are very happy to have him here to talk to the medical professions who are going to hear it about the digital transformation healthcare, which is very, very essential for all the doctors. Most of the doctors are now have learned about most of the IT, but still we are behind. So that will be a very good talk, and we will be aware of it if you give us a good lecture this for this 1 hour, and all will be attentive. So on behalf of Kerala IRIA, I welcome Mr. Sunil David to give his talk. I welcome all the delegates also who's listening to talk. Please be with us online for 1 hour. I think it will be 1 hour or more. Okay. Soumya, is Joy coming online?
Joy Maila sir will be joining now. Else, we can commence the session now, and later point of time we'll ask him to talk his views on today's session. Okay.
Yeah. Now I welcome Mr. Sunil David to give his lecture. Over to you to the platform.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gomati, and thank you, MedPiper team, for inviting me to deliver this talk. And good evening to all those who have joined virtually. It's 9 p.m. here. You have taken time to listen to me. Thank you so much for that. I'll try to make this as interesting as possible. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Yes?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so while the emphasis for this 4 sessions that you're planning to have starting from this week over the next 4 weeks is on digital healthcare, I want to specifically cover how Metaverse would impact digital healthcare. And so what I want to do is over the next 40 to 45 minutes, very quickly cover what is Metaverse, its characteristics, what are the different layers of Metaverse, how is the industry today getting value from it. And we also started to see Indian companies who are trying to explore the Metaverse opportunity, and then go into the real meat, what are the digital technologies which are impacting healthcare specifically, and what kind of use cases that we are seeing in healthcare, and also talk about some initiatives that some of the Indian healthcare groups are taking up as far as Metaverse is concerned. I would then conclude and then leave some 10-15 minutes for questions. Okay, so question is, how would you define the Metaverse? So you can call Metaverse as an alternate world. So meta is alternate, and verse means reality. At an alternate world, it can be an alternate universe. So it's basically a unlimited universe. It's completely immersive. It's you can call it as a three-dimensional internet, right? So today, internet is two-dimensional, whereas you can call metaverse as a three-dimensional internet in which you are also participating in it, right? So in the metaverse, one can embed and link immersive content. You can use it as a platform to share your stories. It's a place where you can do a lot of activities. For example, you can play games with friends. You can use different equipment to get into the metaverse, but you can also build your own digital avatar. You can build your own digital avatar and have that avatar collaborate in the metaverse. You can also use metaverse to collaborate, to learn, to train. So it's basically a place, a community where one can share and learn, right? But the difference is that it's all in a very immersive manner, right? You'll get that immersive experience, and thanks to technology today, which is allowing you to do that. Now, what would be the characteristics of metaverse? So the first and foremost thing is that there are no barriers as such between the real and the digital. We are seeing this whole convergence between the physical and the digital world. So metaverse is essentially an endless space. You can't unplug it. It's always active. It is immersive. So for example, you can use virtual reality headsets, spatial computing, and so on to get into the metaverse. The other very important characteristics of the metaverse is that it is completely decentralized, which means that you don't have any single authority which has control over it, right? So all users who are on the metaverse, they are equal stakeholders on the metaverse. And of course, when you are in the metaverse, it's just not to share experiences, to share stories, to discover new people, communities. You would also want to see how you can economically benefit from it, right? So the whole metaverse is powered by blockchain, on which you can actually use cryptocurrencies to trade on the metaverse. And I'm going to talk about it. And the other important dimension of the characteristics that it is meant for social experiences, right? And this has been triggered because of COVID, because ever since the pandemic hit us 2.5 years back, we've been always mostly confined virtually. And that was one of the trigger point why we've seen a lot of activity on the metaverse space. And last year, if you recollect, around June or July, Facebook decided to rename themselves as Meta, because what they found is that they found the user engagement on the Facebook platform coming down. They also noticed that generally the Gen Z or the younger people who have always been there, accessing Facebook, they were moving to newer platforms. And hence Facebook was trying to figure out what can they do to encourage user engagement. How can they get users back onto the platform? And that's when they believed that they can, they formed this, they renamed the company as Meta. And the whole objective now is to make sure that they get the users back. But the difference being that it's going to be a lot more immersive. And Facebook instantly acquired a company called Oculus. They are very strong in the virtual reality space. And so Facebook is, betting big on metaverse. Now, there are different layers of the metaverse, and I'm going to very quickly cover each layer, right? The first and foremost thing is that it is all meant about experiences, right? So, for example, today you have a lot of gaming platforms like Roblox, like Unity, so one can, even in India, we're seeing a lot of people using, your mobile, your PCs for playing games, with your friends. Or maybe even colleagues. The whole experience when you talk about gaming in metaverse is going to be different because you're going to be in a three-dimensional space. Secondly, the way you shop is going to be different. The example of how Flipkart came up with the augmented reality app, where today instead of traditionally going to the app and checking what you want to buy, you can actually have an augmented reality app where if you want to buy, say, a furniture, that will just come alive. You can actually feel as though you're sitting there. Right, and that's thanks to a very good quality augmented reality app that they built. Collaboration. So this is an example which you see here is of Microsoft. They built, as you know, Microsoft has got a platform called Teams, which is meant for collaboration for organizations. What they've done is that they have enhanced that platform. Now it's called Mesh, where it's just not you who can be part of the platform, but you can also build a digital avatar of yourself. And the avatar, because today we talk about a digital persona. People are concerned about, people do have a digital persona today. And again, that was triggered by COVID, right? So you can either yourself or your digital avatar can actually be on a mesh platform interacting with others. The way you buy real estate is also going to change. And again, this was triggered by COVID. People could not go and actually see what they wanted to buy. And the whole buying process changed because one can actually wear a virtual reality headset and feel as though they are in the property, right? So it's all about experiences. Second thing is, this whole aspect about discovery. You want to discover new people. You want to discover communities, right? You want to see what friends are doing right now, right? So for example, a good example is Clubhouse, which is an audio, platform. I'm not sure whether you are using this or not, but it's available on both the Android and iOS, Apple, where one can actually use the app and converse with people who may not even know, right? You can converse on different topics. You can choose what you want. Microsoft had acquired one company called Blizzard, this was about a year back for $69 billion, very strong in the gaming space, right? So the stakes are very high as far as the metaverse is concerned. Now, metaverse is also about giving monetization opportunities for the creators, right? So we are in a creator economy, right? So unlike earlier, where you have people who create content and maybe to a certain extent get monetized for that. In the metaverse, content is just not user generated, but when you start engaging with communities on the metaverse or people in the metaverse, it actually generates a lot more content, right? So one can be a content creator and one can also be a content amplifier on the metaverse. So the creators of content, somebody who can make a very good gaming engine, or somebody can build, say, any use case, whether it could be real estate or health. So people who really make good content today can really monetize the metaverse. Now, the question is, how do you get into the metaverse? So what's the access into the metaverse? So of course, you have your augmented reality, virtual reality headsets. You're going to get a lot of data coming in from sensors, from Internet of Things, biometrics from people. So data coming in from your smart wearables. So there are numerous interfaces which are coming in, right? So the whole spatial computing is going to go beyond augmented reality and virtual reality. You're going to have haptic devices which actually feel as though you're, experiencing something, right? You would have probably experienced that in virtual reality, right? So the experience is going to be different because the networks which are going to power metaverse applications are going to be much faster, much lower latency, and so on, right? So in this context, I wanted to share with you about Unity. Unity is a well-known company in the gaming space. They are actually building three-dimensional engines where they can display, content, animation, and so on. Unity is a US company, and they started off by building gaming engines on the metaverse. And now they're also offering gaming applications for enterprises. And they have been growing at almost 40% growth. Compounded annual growth is almost 40% over the last 3-4 years. Unreal is another example of a company which is trying to leverage the metaverse. But this whole aspect about spatial computing, it is going just beyond augmented reality and virtual reality, and newer devices are coming which will allow you access to the metaverse. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it is a decentralized platform, right? So there is no permission that is needed. Everyone is a stakeholder on this. It is completely distributed, right? It's completely distributed. It's very open, and no single authority, a central authority to control. And here in this context, I wanted to tell you about how the evolution of the web has happened. So if you recollect in 95, 96, when internet was launched, Netscape was one of the first browsers that you probably would have seen. Very static web pages, right? Not much of graphical content, no video at all. And then you've seen this evolution to Web 2.0, where you had a lot more graphical content, a lot more video. You could share your content, on various platforms like YouTube and so on. And now we are getting to the stage where it is Web 3.0, where you're going to see a lot more, AI being used. It's going to get a lot more decentralized, because Web 2.0, what really happened was that we found very few companies taking advantage of Web 2.0. Users like you and me were really not getting monetized opportunities on Web 2.0. So companies like a Google or a Facebook, they really made it big on Web 2.0 because they were monetizing thanks to all the data that they've been getting from all of us, and using that to ensure that targeted advertising can be done and all that, because most of them, their revenue model is all around advertising. And in the case of Web 3.0, it's going to be completely decentralized. Everybody, as I said, is a stakeholder, right? And you're going to get a lot more opportunities to monetize a lot of your content on Web 3.0. And there are various different technologies that are going to power the metaverse. Web 3.0 and metaverse are different. Web 3.0 technologies will be playing a big part in the metaverse. So, for example, the whole Web 3.0 decentralized architecture is running on blockchain. Blockchain is a decentralized ledger system in which data is recorded in blocks, and all these blocks are connected. I have a slide on that. We are going to use non-fungible tokens. Again, I'm going to talk about it. The whole finance is going to change. It's completely decentralized finance. Today, a lot of the transactions which are happening are going through a central authority, right? Whereas in the case of decentralized finance, one can just make peer-to-peer payments without having to go through a central authority, right? So we're going to see a lot of these technologies power the metaverse going forward. Now, very quickly coming to blockchain, because that is the platform on which you're going to run metaverse. And in the case of blockchain, what happens is that all data, all transactions that you record, they're all stored in blocks. Okay, so you have data and what is called as a hash. A hash is nothing but a mathematical function, or it's an alphanumerical code that is derived from a mathematical function, and each hash is assigned to a particular block. Okay, so you have a hash that is assigned to a block, and if you see this picture on the right side, you'll find that block 2 would not just have a hash assigned to it, but it also has the previous hash of the previous block. Okay, so that makes it very difficult for anyone to tamper with any data on the blockchain. And because all the data is recorded in blocks and it is connected through a chain, it's called blockchain, and it is completely distributed. Unlike earlier architectures, for example, in Web 2.0, it's completely centralized. A lot of servers. In case of blockchain, it's completely decentralized. So you have computer nodes that are distributed across the world, right? So if, say, a computer system fails somewhere, you don't have to worry. There would be the other systems which are connected through the block. Those would continue to function, right? So completely distributed architecture. Your transaction costs are going to be much lower. Very, very secure, because once data is stored on the blockchain, you can't tamper with it. So if you really want to tamper with any data on the blockchain, more than 50% of the blocks have to be tampered with, and it's not going to be easy for a hacker to do that, right? So it is auditable. You can trace all the data which is there in blockchain. So in India today, we are seeing use of blockchain. For example, land records are getting digitized. Today land records are tamperable. So some of these land records can be put on a blockchain. Health records can be put on a blockchain, because health records, again, electronic health records can be tampered with. You can put that on a blockchain. I have a short video which will explain this, but I just wanted to present the slide to show you all how critical the blockchain platform is when it comes to metaverse, because that's the underlying platform on which you're running with all your applications. Now, coming to the human side, what are the interfaces into metaverse? Now, I spoke about augmented reality, virtual reality, right? So one can wear a virtual reality headset, and there are differences between augmented reality and virtual reality. In the case of virtual reality, you put on a virtual reality headset and you get into a completely different virtual world. In the case of augmented reality, you're superimposing digital on the physical world. So, for example, a good example of augmented reality is Pokemon Go, a very well-known game where one could actually track the Pokemons, right? So you have your phone, your app, and you are actually using the app. So you're having digital overlay on your physical world, right? So, and the mix of both AR and VR is called mixed reality, AR and VR. So we're seeing the cost of headsets coming down. And this will come down even further. Once you have cost of headsets coming down, then that will mean a lot more easier for people to access the metaverse. Now, all can't afford AR and VR headsets, right? It comes at a cost. So the real democratization would happen when we are able to use our standard smartphones and your PCs to get into the metaverse, right? And there a lot of work needs to be done, right? So your smartphones would soon, I'm hoping that once 5G and 6G, the future comes up, 5G just few months away, but when you have high-speed networks and when you have AR and VR kind of applications running on a 5G handset, you can use that as an interface to get into the metaverse, because you really need high bandwidth. You need low latency. Your PCs also can be as an access point into the metaverse. And today there is technology one can, where you could do brain mapping, so it's called mind bending interface tech. So a lot of these interfaces are now getting built, developed to be able to get into the metaverse. Now, one very important aspect which I just wanted to cover is this whole infrastructure piece, right? So when you're running such very high immersive applications where you want very good experience, you really need to have very strong and very powerful infrastructure to host all that, right? So you need very powerful computing systems which have chips, which are very fast, which are very dense. You'll need very good cloud platforms in which you're running all the computing infrastructure, right? Those are very important. And what is also equally important is you need very good networks, right? So from the comfort of your home, you would want to use a 5G broadband network, or from your phone, a 5G enabled phone, where you're able to access the metaverse. And 5G, fifth generation technology, is different from the previous generation technologies, because in 5G, the experience is going to be different. Your latency is going to be very, very low. The round trip time it takes for a packet to go from point A to point B, very, very reliable and extremely fast speeds. So in 5G, the promise is that the speeds can be anywhere from 300 Mbps to maybe even 2 gigabits per second or 3 gigabits per second, depending upon what frequency bands that you're going to use, right? So 5G is going to play a huge part when it comes to the infrastructure piece as it relates to the metaverse. Now, having covered about metaverse, what are its characteristics and what are the different layers, let me very quickly move to my second part, which is talking about how is it going to impact industry. So I just gave you an example of auto industry, and this can apply to pretty much every industry, right? So in the metaverse today, the way people collaborate is going to be different, right? So one can be on the metaverse, one can have an avatar on it of yourself on the metaverse and collaborate in real time on the metaverse. You can simulate autonomous vehicles. You can also build virtual showrooms, right? So if you want a customer to experience how your automobile is, you can actually build that whole thing on the metaverse, and your customer can actually go into that and feel as though he's in that showroom and feel as though he's in that car driving it. And your whole engagement with customers is going to be different, right? Right from the time you're trying to position a particular model or any product to the customer, to the time he buys it and eventually he starts using it, that whole customer experience dimension is going to change. And of course, in the auto industry, we started to use non-fungible tokens, and I'm going to come to that a little later. Now, one very important aspect which I wanted to cover is this aspect about a digital twin. This has been around for some time. So what is a digital twin? A digital twin is a virtual representation of a physical asset. So one can have a virtual representation of an aircraft engine. One can have a virtual representation of a machine in a factory, or it can be of any system, right? So what happens is that what you want to do is you want to simulate how that physical asset would work, right? So you're constantly feeding that virtual representation. It's basically a digital model with information, right? And then you can visualize how that particular asset would behave on the ground. And the whole objective is to trying to see how we can optimize its use. For example, if you're trying to build a digital twin of a machine, you're constantly collecting information about how the machine is performing. And you're building a digital model, and then you simulate it. And then you start changing. You can build what's called what if scenarios. What if I change the temperature? What if I increase the vibration? How will it impact the performance on the field, right? Will it cause performance issues, right? So you can really provide value through all the visualization that you get, the analysis that you're doing, and you can predict what is going to happen. If, say, temperature continues to go like this, then maybe at some point in time the machine might fail. I'm just giving the example in the manufacturing, but this can also apply in healthcare, and I'm going to talk about it shortly. Here's an example of how digital twin can be from a manufacturing standpoint, a complete digital twin of a machine that has been created. Now, what are the Indian brands doing when it comes to Metaverse? Okay, so wanted to share Tanishq, a well-known brand. They launched their bridal collection. It's called Riva on the Metaverse. Mahindra Group, they launched non-fungible tokens of their Thar vehicles. And I'm going to explain to you non-fungible tokens later. But they built, they are building their platform and they are selling non-fungible tokens of the Thar vehicles. People can buy these NFTs. ITC has also launched, some of their new chocolate brand on the Metaverse. Coca-Cola, they were one of the beverage partner at a wedding. We had a wedding that was done on the Metaverse a few months back. You can probably read about it, where the digital avatar of the bride and the groom were on the Metaverse. And here it's a very interesting incident. The groom's father actually expired 2 years back, and he was wanting a digital avatar of his father to be created so that can be on the Metaverse, and he was really happy to see that avatar because of the fact that his father passed away 2 years back. We're finding SEAT, SEAT Tires is a well-known brand, SEAT tire company. They are actually building, an e-commerce platform which is on the Metaverse, and customers can actually, see how the tires is on the Metaverse, and they can actually, while they see that in a virtual format, they can actually get physical delivery of it, right? So there are a lot of Indian brands who are trying to play in the Metaverse space. It's very early days now, but it will definitely evolve. Now, the question that you might want to know is, what are non-fungible tokens? So non-fungible tokens are basically assets that can be digitally transferable between two people or two organizations. So, for example, token. So token is an asset that is digitally transferable. Now, there are two types of tokens. So one is called fungible token and one is a non-fungible token. So fungible token is Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as you know, is a cryptocurrency. Now, there are Bitcoins which might have the similar value. So that's called a fungible token. But there is a difference when it comes to non-fungible token. A non-fungible token is different. Each token is unique. Okay, so one can have a non-fungible token of a piece of art. A couple of years back, a piece of art was sold, which was made by an artist called Beeple, was sold for $69 million. Can you imagine? So you can have a non-fungible token, and that is of immense value. You can have a non-fungible token of a piece of art. You can have a non-fungible token of a piece of music, video. It could be, moments of a sports person, and so on, right? So the person who actually creates the non-fungible token, he kind of gets a royalty for that, and that's how he gets monetized, right? So NFTs can be traded on the Metaverse because it is tokenized, right? It is digitally transferable. So one can buy NFTs, and the whole hope is that NFTs will increase in value. So we should buy NFTs for certain, and you're using cryptocurrencies for that, okay, to buy NFTs on the Metaverse, right? So we started to see Indian companies experiment with that, and I just wanted to share some examples. And let me quickly run a video shortly for you. I hope you can hear.
Hey guys, it's Wasim from Curious Doc. Today we have Dr. William Seidel. See how we actually apply it. In this sense is a digital ledger. Just like a financial ledger where transactions are recorded in a different line on a big document, in blockchain, the data points are recorded in discrete blocks. Each block has a hash number, which is like its fingerprint. And it also records the hash number for the block that goes before it. So in this way, all the blocks are connected together as a chain, which is why it's called blockchain. The data contained in each of these blocks can be whatever you want. So in Bitcoin, it's usually who's sending the Bitcoin, who's receiving the Bitcoin, and the amount of currency being transferred. NFTs are similar to Bitcoins in that they use the blockchain technology to record ownership data, but the only difference is that NFTs can't be traded between one another. So if you imagine a $1 coin, it can be traded with another $1 coin because they're essentially identical. However, something like an artwork is non-fungible, meaning it's unique, the only one of its kind. And it can't be traded with another artwork because it doesn't have inherent value. This is why NFTs are used to represent artwork these days. So the blocks on an NFT record things like the original creator and the current owner. So every time that NFT is transferred to a new owner, it gets added on as a new block. And so you have this whole permanent record of who's owned it over time.
Artwork is just an early manifestation of NFTs, but there is still a lot to benefit in its application in healthcare.
Number one is that it's secure from hackers. The interesting thing about the blockchain technology is that it's decentralized, meaning it's not stored on one single computer. Instead, it's shared across a network of computers across the world. So every time the data is altered, it needs to match across all those computers in the network for it to change. If a hacker altered the blockchain on just their computer, it wouldn't match the other computers on the network, so that change would be rejected by the network. So instead, the hacker would need to alter the blockchain on over 50% of the computers in that network for that change to stick, which would require way too much computing power and money for it to actually be feasible. So what this means is that health records based on NFT technology is super safe from unauthorized tampering.
The second main benefit is that it will make healthcare safer. There are plenty of times where we have asked patients what medical conditions they have, and they tell us they have none. It's only when we ask them about their medications, they tell us they take 3 heart failure medications, 4 diabetic medications, and 3 more for gout. Or imagine having a trauma patient come into the emergency department unconscious. You don't know what medications they're on, you don't know what medications they're allergic to. So what you do is you pick up the phone and you spend about half an hour trying to get in contact with a family member to get all this information. Now imagine having an NFT as a medical record, where you can access the patient's medical information anywhere in the world. This would also mean that the medical record is always up to date and will reduce the medical errors that are made in the hospital.
The third benefit is that it improves continuity of care. So imagine you went to hospital for a chest infection, got some antibiotics, and you were discharged a few days later. But then your primary care provider in the community doesn't know about the new diagnosis and doesn't know when to follow you up because of a lack of communication with the hospital.
Another example is in clinic. For example, cancer surveillance. Often we get their tumor markers done, there's medical imaging, and also they've been looked after and followed up by the GP. Now, all of these 3 things often, or almost always, are in 3 different places. We require 3 different logins, and the whole process is quite inefficient and things can often be missed.
So an NFT health record would close the communication loop between all the different health providers and improve continuity of care. Number 4 is that NFT health records restores ownership of health data back to the patient. Nowadays, your health information is fragmented between many different entities. So your hospital might own some of your information, your primary care provider might own some of your information, and even your Fitbit might own some of your information. You have very limited access to that information, and you have little control of how it's used. An NFT health record restores ownership to the patient. So you could click on a button on your phone and control who accesses it.
The final benefit of an NFT is its application to public health and also research. Say we wanted to test the benefit of a medication towards COVID-19. Now we would need access to all the health records of people in across Australia, for example, and to get that at the moment would be quite difficult considering medical records are owned by different states, owned by different government entities.
With NFT health records, we can request data from millions of patients relatively easily and transfer that data securely. Obviously, the patients would have to consent to the release of their data, but you can imagine how this would make research more impactful and effective.
So I'm just cutting this video short, but I just wanted to share with you how NFTs, non-fungible tokens, can play a part in the healthcare space, and they were explaining to you how the health records of people are safe, secure, and so on, right?
Hey guys, it's Wasim from.
Okay, now coming to some of the Indian companies that I mentioned, Make My Trip, they're selling vacation NFTs. MG Motors, which is a well-known auto OEM brand, they actually are selling NFTs, and these NFTs are some of the old models of vehicles, very vintage vehicles, and they come with some very unique value. So what happens is that MG Motors are able to sell these NFTs, individuals who find value, and some of them are very, keen to purchase some of these old vintage pictures and all that. and that has some value, and they're able to use crypto to buy it, and they're able to create communities, because one very important aspect is brands want to engage with their customers and create communities, and that's where NFTs can play a part. Now, very quickly, when you look at digital health technologies, now all what is shown on the screen, whether it is wearable devices or whether it's telehealth, telemedicine, EHR, personalized medicine, they kind of been around, right? I mean, it's maybe the pace at which this has to increase, adoption has to increase, has not happened, but they've always been around, right? And it's only going to get, the pace at which it's adopting is going to get faster. But what will really change is technology, right? So the fact that you're seeing a lot more compute used today, high-speed networks, the whole, the applications that you're seeing from a healthcare standpoint, that will definitely undergo a radical change. And I just wanted to highlight this example of a digital twin. I spoke about the digital twin earlier, but one can actually build a digital twin of a heart, right? And today, you can actually use sensors which will constantly be monitoring the performance of the heart and then feed all the data into an AI system. And you can actually build a model of your heart, right? And the whole objective is, while you monitor, the health of the heart in real time, the whole objective is to making sure that you can come out with positive business outcomes. You really want to get to a stage where when you're really collecting all the data and you're building a model of your heart, you want to get to a stage where you can actually prevent maybe a heart attack from happening, right? And here, combination of sensorization with AI, machine learning, all of them coming together, and you can actually build a 3D model of it. And that's where your metaverse comes in. It goes a long way in making sure that you're able to do proper diagnosis and prevent, attacks from happening, and that obviously has an impact on, the well-being of the person. Now, what would be the key applications of metaverse in the healthcare space? Very quickly, I wanted to share in medical education and training. I have a short video which shows how today you can have, people are going through medical courses. If you really want them to get a feel of how it is to do surgery, one can actually use VR and do that on metaverse, right? And they get that feel in terms of how they can do it. And that will prepare them when they eventually have to do a surgery, right? So in the case of people wanting to, learn in the training side, surgeries, I'm going to show a video how a surgery was done using, augmented reality and a high-speed network. You're going to see fitness and wellness that's going to take shape. Metaverse, you can have, communities created, people exchanging information about their fitness and so on. Plastic surgeries, then pain management. So these are the kind of applications that could be possible when you talk about healthcare, and this will only evolve. Okay, it's very early days yet. I very quickly wanted to share how surgeons can take medicine into the metaverse space. And here I just wanted to share an example of how a surgeon in London, he was performing an operation using a Microsoft HoloLens headset, which is basically an AR display and got sensors. And they were getting other surgeons from other countries, and they wanted to all collaborate and in real time to make sure that they take the right decision, right, when it comes to making sure that they're able to do the surgery. And I just wanted to share a short video. Let me just run that video for you.
Hi everybody. Hi Safi. So the HoloLens itself really allows us to reshape the way we connect people, we communicate with people, and also to be used in teaching and training. Initially, when you put the HoloLens on, it feels a bit strange, but actually within a few minutes, it becomes quite normal. You feel as though you're just discussing cases with people in the same room, for example, like we do in normal hospital practice.
We can come in and actually look at this content in full 3D. And obviously when you're working in this case, the medical field, having a full 3D understanding of a situation, for example, is really much more powerful in solidifying how you want to navigate it in your mind.
The pace of change is remarkable. Technology is really shaping and changing the way we provide healthcare very quickly.
Right. So a good example of how Metaverse has been used in surgeries. This is another couple of use cases for training, where you would want your people who are in medical colleges or people who are doing their internships would want to get trained, and you can actually leverage the Metaverse for that. Okay, now having covered the various use cases when it comes to Metaverse and how it can impact healthcare, whether it's in the case of training, whether it's in the case of how you can improve the overall patient experience, or whether it comes to surgeries and so on. There are now Indian healthcare groups which are now trying to play in the Metaverse space. They want to leverage the Metaverse, and I wanted to share the example of how Yashoda Hospitals in Hyderabad, they were the first healthcare group to establish a presence on the Metaverse platform. And so what they've done is there's a marketplace called Decentraland in the Metaverse. So one can actually buy virtual real estate there. It's a place where people can buy land and maybe have a customer experience center there. You could have your customers, maybe themselves or their avatars, being part of the whole Metaverse, and you can actually use it to engage with your customers, which are largely your patients, right? So Yashoda Hospital was, they claim rather, they're the first ever healthcare group in India to be on the Metaverse platform. And I just quickly want to run through this video, very short video, less than a minute. Right, so interesting. So we'll see how this evolves. But not to be left behind is Apollo Hospital. So they also, are in the Metaverse, and they're using a virtual reality platform called 8 Chili Hint VR. And the objective is to be able to provide immersive experience so that they can actually improve patient engagement, which is so important. They're also helping people on training. They're using this virtual reality platform to counsel patients both pre and post operation, and all that is done in virtual reality powered by high-speed networks, right? So the whole objective is to engage users in a virtual reality based platform so that they can empower their active abilities to regulate their emotion, right? So this will go a long way in trying to improve patient experience and satisfaction. So I think that this is just the start. We'll probably start seeing a lot more healthcare groups in India. It could be hospitals, could be diagnostic centers, and all the other all other stakeholders in the healthcare space wanting to leverage Metaverse. So this is early days. I just want to conclude by talking about 4 or 5 important aspects. So one thing being that this is definitely going to be a disruptive technology, because Metaverse is an interdisciplinary field. It is coming together of multiple technologies. You need IoT, you need high-speed networks, you need very good computing infrastructure, you need augmented reality, virtual reality headsets, you need blockchain. So with all of them coming together, it is a very disruptive technology. But one needs to be balanced, and how do you moderate the use of it, right? So that's important. This whole democratization of metaverse, which means that making sure that it is all pervasive, that's going to take a little while, because it's very, very early days yet. Use cases are being developed in various industries. But what we're seeing is the cost of technology is coming down. And because the cost of technology is coming down, and with a lot more advancements that you're seeing, while cost is coming down, you're seeing a lot more advancement in technology. So with all this happening, it won't be a far off dream anymore. It will definitely be a reality. What is also going to happen is that it is going to create a lot more employment opportunities. For example, in India alone, there are more than 10 or 15 metaverse startups which are trying to build platforms, build use cases, trying to help companies in their metaverse journey. I have interacted with 3 or 4 CEOs of a few startups who are trying to play and monetize this whole metaverse platform. And so while it's throwing open opportunities for entrepreneurs, it also means opportunities for employment, right? So with all these different technologies being used in metaverse, be it blockchain, or 5G or cloud, we hopefully see a lot more job opportunities. And the use cases will evolve. Companies would have to experiment initially and see how this works for their own environment, right? So even within one segment, even within healthcare, what would work, say, for hospital A may not necessarily work for hospital B, right? So one needs to be very clear in terms of what use case they want to use metaverse for. But the use cases will evolve as the cost of technology comes down. So on that note, I would like to conclude, and I'm happy to take questions. I hope you found the session useful. Okay, I'm seeing some questions on the Q&A.
Yes, sir. I have a couple of questions that I have received. Can I go one by one?
Yes.
Yeah. So the first question is how the metaverse can change healthcare.
So, I just shared some examples. So when you look at healthcare as such, in terms of one area is, of course, in the area of trying to improve patient experiences, right, in terms of how care is administered. So that's one area. Secondly, in the case of training medical students, people are doing house surgery internships. If you really want to train them on how to do surgeries, so you can use metaverse. Obviously, augmented reality, virtual reality play a part. So that I've already explained. That is one area where you definitely can leverage metaverse. Third area is, of course, use of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which again, I played a video on that, where you could have all your health records in the form of NFTs. Each record is unique to you. And you can also ensure the safety of those health records, right? And if you really want the best care possible, you can have doctors, surgeons collaborating on the metaverse, trying to figure out what could be the possible diagnosis for a problem that you might be having, right? So healthcare use cases will evolve over a period of time, but right now, 2 or 3 important areas would be around patient experience, around training, and also in terms of how do you do surgeries and so on, Soumya.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, okay. So can you just maybe give a differentiation for metaverse consultation and metaverse visit?
So, see, we are all used to telemedicine, right? So in telemedicine, we are using a network, and we are virtually consulting a doctor, right? Now, that's telemedicine, right? So that is either through audio, mostly it is through video. That's where you really experience, a doctor talking to patient through video means. But in the case of metaverse, what's going to happen is that whole experience is going to be different, right? So you could have your digital avatar talking to the avatar of a doctor on the metaverse. So today the telemedicine is happening through the internet. Today you could have a consultation or a visit inside the internet itself. Let me put it that way, right? Because you have that immersive experience in the metaverse itself. So you can have, real immersive experience. So that whole engagement between the doctor and the patient is going to change, Soumya, when you're talking about metaverse, because you're going to make it a lot more immersive, and it is bound to improve doctor-patient interaction and also overall patient experience, Soumya.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, medication error is quite common in hospitals. Will in future blockchain technology can solve this issue?
Yeah, so blockchain is promising a lot, and so far we have not come across any challenges where somebody has tampered with blockchain. Not that it cannot happen, but it is very, very difficult to tamper with blockchain. So when you have all your medical records, of patients on the blockchain, extremely unlikely that they can be tampered with. And today people are concerned that whether your medical records are safe, somebody is not misusing it. So when you have all these medical records on blockchain, and that's the underlying platform or the technology which is powering metaverse, you can be rest assured. In fact, when I played that video also, it showed about how the blocks are connected, hashes, and you can't tamper with it and so on, right? So from a safety and security perspective, at this point in time, it looks very, very secure, Soumya, as far as blockchain is concerned.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, what is the role of healthcare organizations in implementing Meta?
Yeah, so if you, I gave the example of Apollo hospitals and even Yashoda, which are which are now in the metaverse, right? So you can actually use it for better patient engagement. So for hospitals, I think the use cases will evolve. It's very early days yet. As far as standard doctor-patient interaction is concerned, maybe that could be done on metaverse. That is a possibility. If you just look at pharmaceuticals, they are actually using a technology. They can actually use a technology like a blockchain to make sure that whenever they are building blockbuster drugs for the future, obviously intellectual property, which is so important, and they don't want that to be stolen, right? You can actually have all of that stored on blockchain. So whatever that you're building, you can actually build all that stuff on blockchain, and that will definitely go a long way in making sure security of your IP and also for traceability, right? So for example, today one big challenge is counterfeit drugs. Vaccines are prevalent today. That can be avoided thanks to blockchain, because blockchain is a ledger where you can actually store all your data, and you can actually, through blockchain and combination with Internet of Things, you can actually know whether a particular drug is counterfeit or fake or past its expiry date or not, right? So you also have to look at some of the underlying technologies, not just the metaverse in isolation, but also these underlying technologies like blockchain and Internet of Things that will play a big part in trying to impact healthcare, Soumya. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you, sir. Can we take two more questions?
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the other question is, how can I use it in healthcare training?
Yeah. So I gave you the example of for example, students maybe they can actually use it they can use virtual reality headsets, right? So if they have to learn how to say do a surgery, they can use virtual reality to start with. Today it is there, technology is there, one can use VR headsets to be able to train them, like how you have pilots training that trainees on virtual cockpits before they actually fly a plane. Similarly, trainees can be trained using virtual reality to make sure that they can do that. They get a feel of how the operating theater is, and they can do those surgeries. That's one area. You can also train again using virtual reality, and later on over Metaverse, how do you handle patients, right? Because even that training is given in terms of making sure that eventually when these trainees become doctors, that they know how to handle patients, right? Providing that empathetic care and so on. So even that, so anything related to training, whether it is how do you deal with patients, how do you do surgeries, or anything related to the medical field. See, I'm not an expert in medical side, but whatever from a training standpoint can be done in physical today, that is doable on virtual reality and metaverse platforms, Soumya. And the cost of this infrastructure, that the headset cost, once it comes down, then we'll see a lot of adoption picking up.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, how far metaverse technology is reaching the remote locations across India?
That's a very, very good question. Because today in India, we have this digital divide. So while the cities, the metropolitan cities, the tier 1, tier 2 cities, from a digital infrastructure standpoint, are good. Of course, there is still improvement needed. But today, many of the rural parts of India are still not connected well through digital infrastructure, right? So even 5G, which I talked about, that will probably reach the villages maybe a year or more later, right? So I think what is really important is, if you really want metaverse to kind of pervade the rural parts of India, a lot of improvement needs to be done in our digital healthcare infrastructure. The infrastructure has to improve because all these immersive applications need high-speed connectivity, very, very low latency. If you're using 2G, 2G will never work on metaverse. You really need high-speed networks, and then cloud data infrastructure. The data centers, you don't have too many in the rural parts of India. So we need to improve our overall digital infrastructure in rural part of India, and that's when you'll probably leverage the metaverse. So I would say that we are maybe about a couple of years or maybe more from this really touching the rural parts of India, Soumya.
Thank you, sir. I think we have taken up almost all the questions today. And on behalf of Piper Technologies and Jonamed, I would like to thank Sir Mr. Sunil David for joining us today in detailing the applications of metaverse in healthcare and how far the healthcare sector can be improvised in adopting all this kind of technology. Now I would request Dr. Anju Gopinath to give the vote of thanks.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Very informative talk, which actually dived deep into the nitty-gritties of the metaverse. And some of us in the medical fraternity, they're very much in tune with the digital changes and advances, but some of us are still digitally challenged. So today's talk, it actually broke the whole topic down into bite-sized pieces, which could be understood by anyone, and how even big brands are actually merging metaverse with their own products. So even for healthcare industry, it's like very heartwarming to know how NFTs can help us, and also for making us understand the different applications of the metaverse in the healthcare. Thank you, Mr. Sunil David, for the wonderful presentation. I'm sure that everyone has learned something new today. And I would like to thank you once more in the name of IMA and IRA. And before concluding, let me also thank the participants who took the time to attend the program today. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you.